This is Fantology.
You may have heard of us.
All right, what's up, Katan? This is Steven, your host with Mythology Podcast. I have my lifelong friend Jake on, and our extra special guest, once again, is James Islington, back for part two of our Strength of the Few conversation. This one is going to be full spoilers because by now the book has come out.
Yeah, I'm
So,
excited. Excited to dive in. We talked a little bit, kind of hinted at some of this stuff. So,
Mm.
all right,
yeah.
so gloves off here. We'll talk about some things. I I had two main thoughts around this book. One, we kind of talked about in part one, which is the massive expansion of the scope and like how difficult that must have been to balance everything and make choices as to what goes in and what doesn't. And the second was I just thought it was so interesting that once again, your series that at first take seems to be a classical fantasy has now become this sci-fi fantasy thing. I don't even know what I mean. Do you consider it a fantasy or a sci-fi or some like conglomeration of both?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's interesting because yeah, I would still classify it more fantasy than anything else. Although I've seen I don't think it would be incorrect to say it's science fantasy or whatever you'd like to call it, that sort of conglomeration. But I'm very like I love sci-fi. And I think that I grew up reading fantasy. That's always been what I've read. But a lot of the other media I consume, so TV shows that I watch, movies that I watch, video games that I play, I'm very heavily sort of on the sci-fi side. Um, and I think it's I think it's science fiction does a great job of posing really interesting philosophical questions. Um, which I think
Mhm.
is largely what has made me in both of these series kind of go, okay, I'm interested in taking this somewhat sci-fi concept and putting it in a fantasy world because it lets me explore these concepts. Um, but also I don't have to look up all of the hard facts about how the science might work. So, um,
That is
uh,
helpful.
yeah. Um, but it's partly that, and it's partly also I see that some of these concepts done in ways that I think, oh, this is a cool concept, but it's not being done well. Like I know with time travel, uh, I love time travel, but I was often left really disappointed by the execution of time travel because I'd get to the end of the story and go, oh, that didn't really make sense. That wasn't
Mm.
terribly consistent. And it's a little bit the same with uh, I guess you, I guess you call it this sort of multiverse um, concept. Not so much the multiverse thing itself, but the way I guess science fiction often treats characters in the multiverse setting. Um, it's like a lot of sci-fi shows will have an episode where there's a multiverse and there's an evil version of the good character.
Mhm.
Um, and it's interesting. It's interesting. I often enjoy those episodes, but in some ways they're just shortcutting it's a different world that we happen to have stumbled into, and this character is completely different for no clear reason. Um, yeah, a lot of it is sort of a mix of love of sci-fi and then mild annoyance at some of the way that sci-fi treats
Well,
the concepts.
like going off of that, I think you've done a really good job in book two of setting up how these three Viz have such different
Yeah.
experiences
Mm,
throughout this time, so that way they are on, like if you're off by a degree at like 2 miles later, you're going to diverge so much, and so that's been really interesting to see develop and like think about the impact in books three and four.
yeah,
But
awesome. Yeah, I mean that's very much like I said, that's kind of what I was going for.
Yeah.
It's something that the closest thing I've seen, and I ended up watching it uh 2021 maybe when I was looking up kind of are there any TV shows, are there any books, whatever that do something similar to this. There's a TV show called Counterpart. I
Mm.
don't know if you've heard of it. It's got J.K. Simmons.
Mm.
It's actually really good. Um, but that's the closest thing I've seen to in media to this idea of somebody actually getting, copied effectively, um, and then slowly diverging.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Speaking of TV shows, this is like an obligatory Fantology meme. Have you heard of the show Dark? It's a German
Yes,
TV show. Okay.
yes, yes. I've seen
Like,
Dark. I've seen Dark. It's
okay.
great.
That's like my all-time favorite TV show or sci-fi show that's ever done time travel. Just because
Yeah,
similar to like Canius, everything just like fits in perfectly. I've been trying to get
yeah.
Steven to watch it for years. He always says he will eventually, but
I
Eventually,
it
I
took
will.
yeah, it took me ages because um like it's kind of sad because it's subtitled. I was like, it
yeah,
feels like so much more effort. But then once I started, I was like, oh, I'm into this.
yeah,
It's really good. So yeah, it
yeah.
was very very worth it.
Maybe with the
See,
James
Jake,
Islington
James
stamp of
has the same
approval.
excuse. He has the same excuse that I do.
Yeah.
So, James, you don't have to respond to this necessarily, but I'm really hoping that later in the series we get the Spider-Man meme of the three Vizes meeting up somehow and pointing at each other, and we can see the end result of this, off by a degree, different by a mile type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, obviously without going into what'll happen, I mean, I feel like at some point that would be a logical progression of story.
Because
So
we almost had it with two Spider-Men and
yeah,
when Viz Prime, I don't know, went to um the
To Lucium.
Gaelic world.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm really bad with names, so it's the Egyptian world and the Gaelic world. I don't even know if I'm really nailing the Obitium and Lucium. That's it. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. I wondered if like when I was reading, I was like, can they see him? Like I guess they are copies. They're not
Yeah.
multiversal counterparts. So I don't think the same explanation of just like obliterating each other is really on the table. But
No.
yeah, excited to see that in the future.
So speaking of the two worlds, what were the inspirations for OTM and Lucium?
Um, I mean, Egypt and Celtic mythology, really.
Celtic. That's yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I partly because they were a pretty natural fit alongside Rome. Obviously, Rome's got a pretty strong
Yeah.
history with both of them. And partly because they are again sort of uh, histories and cultures that I was just personally interested in researching a bit. I really enjoyed um, the time that I spent researching Rome, and so this was again just kind of a good excuse to get into that and learn a little bit about that. But surprisingly, actually, Celtic is, I mean, the mythologies are there, but there's much less solid history
Mm.
um, for the Celtic side of things than there is for Egypt. Uh, but yeah, it's still super interesting.
Not to get too into the theory crafting, but is there any connection to the real world there? Like, does the real world exist within the hierarchy multiverse then?
No, no,
Okay.
I can't. Yeah, I very much decided with this series that I wanted to base some of these cultures off
Yeah.
of, um, but um, but yeah, no, there won't be any tying back into our
Okay.
reality or anything like
Mm.
that.
It's
Yeah.
definitely something we thought about while reading
Yeah.
Strength of the Few. Was there any Mistborn influences in Obitium?
I mean, that's a great question. Obviously, I love Mistborn. It's been years since I've read it. But that was one of the reasons that got me back into writing in the first place. So I can certainly see that. Yeah, but no, not specifically. I think I kind of mapped out very much how that world had come about and
Mm,
uh the reasoning behind it, and it is very different from Mistborn. So uh yeah, I mean, there's always influences. There's always,
Yeah.
anything, any of
yeah.
these things that you love that you've read, even if it's 20 years ago, there's always those things seeping through into what you're writing, I think. Um, and I think Brandon Sanderson generally has been um a huge influence on me as a writer. I think
I mean,
he
he's caused
was,
you to
yeah.
have a secret project coming out next year.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Like,
that's right. That's right.
Uh-huh.
Just need to get on Kickstarter and earn 40
Uh-huh.
odd $1 million now.
yeah. Uh,
Yeah, you need a whole company for that.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
was there a specific scene in book two that you were most excited to write or looking forward to? I don't know, that was like central to when you're envisioning book two.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of scenes in there that I had envisaged very early on. I think the three at the end, the three of the different all three of those I had very strongly. Um, I knew exactly what was going to happen in
Mm.
those worlds. Because I knew where I wanted the characters to end up. I knew where I wanted those worlds to end up. Um, and I mean, it's hard to say too, because obviously when you're writing those scenes, you're nearly at the end of the book, so it's always very exciting.
Yeah.
Uh, but I mean, I think there's a scene in Lucium where Vis is talking to his father. Um,
Yeah.
and that
Hmm.
like I was really excited to write that because that's it's kind of a very, I guess, personal and emotional scene. Um, and kind of, yeah, I was excited to write that for his character, basically. And that was one that I'd also envisaged pretty early on. That I knew that I was like, oh, this is something I'm looking forward to writing, and I feel is quite crucial. So
Yeah, it was cool how, and so it's Lucium, not Lucium.
yeah, yeah,
Okay. Okay, Lucium.
hard C's in Latin.
Hard
I
C.
get tripped up by them
No,
almost all the
yeah.
time.
Yeah. This is an ecclesiastical Latin. Got it. Okay. Um, yeah, it's cool in that world. He almost gets everything like pre-Academy this wanted in a lot of
Yeah,
ways, which
yeah,
is really cool to see and how that um really like uh I don't know. It's there's like always like you think you wish for something, but then once you have it, is that really what you wanted? And it
yeah,
almost felt like, yeah, he would have been, completely satisfied if not for the conflict that was there in that series. So that was really interesting to see and cool that um we get to see him almost most at peace with himself, the
yeah,
way I viewed the characters, but then being kind of set up to be like diametrically opposed to the main Viz that we've been following. So that
Hmm.
was really well done. Really
awesome.
enjoyed that.
Right. Like meanwhile, the Viz on Res has crossed the line that he in all of book one
Yeah.
said he was not going to cross. And
Mm.
they're the same person, but at the same time, like if they met up,
Yeah. And
yeah.
they can't really
Yeah,
judge each other because they
yeah,
like
different
Lucia and
experiences.
Vez had yeah. And depending on your deterministic worldview, like would have done the same. given the
Yes.
same set of situations. So,
Yeah, yeah,
or
exactly.
circumstances. So, yeah.
Exactly right.
So we talked about this in the non-spoiler chat, this shift from the fantasy school, very heavy in res in book one, and then massive expansion of scope. Now we've got three different plot lines, and um, how challenging was that to shift like that? Because when I was starting to read it, I kind of assumed that this is where it was going because of how book one ended. But at the same time, I was like, oh man, like I loved all these characters and events that were happening on Res, and now it's split. It took me a little bit to say like, oh no, it's okay. The other places are interesting as well. But
Mm.
like, what was your approach to kind of like ease that in and make it something that's like not too jarring, but at the same time that is the story. So I imagine that was difficult.
It was, yeah. I mean, that was one of the big things. I think one of the reasons that I really liked the idea of, like I said from the start of uh sort of the inception of the series, I had this idea of splitting into three. Was one of the things I don't like in a lot of epic fantasy is when I'm following a character or characters or whatever, and as the story progresses, then all of a sudden you're following a new point of view. And I'm like, "Ah, I
Mm.
don't care. I don't care about this character. I know you want me to care about this character, but I just want to get back to the guys that I like. Um, and so one of the reasons I thought it not necessarily solved, but certainly mitigated a lot of that was uh, you're following, even though it's three characters and the scope is expanding, you're still following characters that you know. If that makes sense.
Hmm.
So that's one of the reasons I wanted to do that. And then yeah, I like I kind of hinted at in the previous discussion, I actually wrote those storylines as individual storylines to begin with. Like I had the overall outline mapped out with them all intertwined, but I really wanted to get each one, I guess, feeling different, but also just to be sure that they were interesting on their own. Because I think that really helped. That did really help because I could read through just by itself and go, no, this story in and of itself is interesting. Um, so because I think that can be the worst thing sometimes is you have multiple points of view and then there's one point of view that you're really into and then
Uh-huh.
there's two that you're just like, ah, really? We gotta wade through this one again. Um, and that was a great thing I was really pleased about with my beta reader feedback was because I pretty much asked everybody which was your favorite world to read, and I had a really even spread of responses,
Mm.
which was and they were quite strongly like. This was definitely my favorite. It wasn't like, oh, I kind of, I kind of liked all three. They were very clear, but um, and that was really encouraging for me because each of those different stories is going to appeal just in a pure, I guess, taste to different people. But everybody, the fact that there wasn't, an avalanche of people going, I much preferred Obitium or Res or Lucium. Yeah, that was very encouraging.
And
You
now I'm
mentioned,
trying to think what my favorite is. I don't know if I had one that was overwhelmingly a favorite, honestly. There were definitely pros and cons of all of
Yeah,
them.
their
absolutely.
favorites at different parts for different reasons, for sure. And like part of it is just like where the pacing's out with it, but also like trying each one had like Res you're familiar with, but you have the
Mm.
whole like the political landscape is being upheaved. And then the other ones are completely new, you're trying to get familiar with. And I feel like I don't know, like how is that mostly editor work or is that your author work where you're like you wrote the three separate plot lines and then like how do you braid them together? Like is
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I did write them. I wrote them very much. So, like I said, I did have the outline, and it was quite a detailed outline, and I had them split up in the outline.
Oh, okay.
Um, so I knew okay, well we're hitting a point here where I am going to be switching to the other two
Okay.
worlds before I come back. Um, and a lot of the work post writing them all was really just getting all the timing right. Not even just in the pacing, but in terms of going, okay, here's my here's my timeline, and oh man, there's one point where all like chapters and chapters of stuff happened in Lucium, um, without anything at all happening in
Hmm.
Overtium and Res, and I was like, I'm gonna have to shift some stuff around here because otherwise you've just got like 7 chapters of Lucium all at once,
Mm.
um,
Yeah.
and stuff like that. But yeah, I mean, like I said, there was a lot of drafts, there was a lot of sort of back and forth. It was a really difficult task as well because, like you said, you're introducing effectively 2 new worlds as well.
Hmm.
So it
Mm.
was almost like writing kind of a weird mix of 2 book 1s and a
Yeah.
book 2 all at
Yeah.
once, and then trying to tie it all together. So yeah, it was it was challenging.
I really enjoyed the moments where there were faint uh feelings or like bleed overs in the
Yep,
characters
Yeah.
where
yep,
that would kind of signal, oh, this is happening that and I loved how subtle it was. I mean, Viz
Yeah.
himself had no idea what was happening and there's never any explanation, but it was a little kind of nugget for the reader.
nice.
You had mentioned in our non-spoiler that there were things you had to cut, like a lot that you had to cut from this book that you wanted to put
Mm.
in. Was it more like, did you want the plot, like, I guess more scenes to happen along the way, or were there specific character plots that you're saving for next book that you couldn't get to?
No, it was more a lot of it, and I do tend to cut a lot anyway, through my drafting process. So it wasn't crazy unusual, but especially when again, you're introducing new worlds, there's so much information that you're
Hmm.
trying to convey and you're not trying to info dump. Um, and so I don't know, I had extra scenes where, things might be explained a little more thoroughly, but I was kind of going, well, actually, this isn't necessary. The reader doesn't need to know this. This is me
Yeah.
just going, I enjoy Celtic history, and so I'm just adding stuff here. But and it's kind of cool, and I think it's kind of cool, but really, unless you're very like me as a reader, you're probably going to go, I'm just going to skip through this bit because it's not that
Okay.
important. So there's a lot of stuff like that where when you're building up these worlds, I think you're really just trying to pare it down to the real nuts and bolts of what you want the reader to know.
Hmm. So-
I thought there was a fairly substantial difference in the pacing between book one and book two, where book one, there were a lot of kind of like day in the life type of vibes as Biz was
Mm,
hanging out at the academy. And I liked the pacing in both, but it felt like you set out to accomplish very different things. And book
yep.
one was very much like establish Viz, establish Res, and all that. And then book two, it seemed like you uh, decided there was really no room in the story to have this type of downtime, we'll say,
Mm,
and stuff is really just kind of always happening. Not that there's, I mean, maybe that's an exaggeration because there is some downtime. I think especially like Lucium starts a bit slower and kind of builds later on, where Obitium is maybe like a kind of a banger right from the beginning. But what I guess was that challenging at all? Was that something you felt like you had to sacrifice?
yeah, I mean, it's already, Strength of the Few, I think I'm gonna say it's 255,000 words. So it's already longer than Will of the Many. Um, and yeah, again, it's that, like, there's a couple of scenes that I had, I think particularly in Lucium, and then maybe a couple in Overtium as well, where it was just kind of character work, with the newer characters, just trying to I guess establish them more. And I ended up deciding that they weren't doing enough. And some of that, it's not that I removed all of that completely. I folded a lot of it into the action. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, it's like you said, it's a different pacing, and part of that is just the expanded scope. I think when you're gonna to have a story, um, I guess going as wide as this, it's very hard to have those downtime moments as well. Uh,
Hmm.
and you know, again, using the will of the many, I very much wanted that to establish Vis's character so that, you know, as we get into the three different versions of him, he is a really well established character and he's had those downtimes and those sort of more quieter personal moments to get to know him. Um, so that you do care about the three versions of him.
As I was getting close to the end, I was getting a little dismayed because for some reason I had in my head that it was a three book series. And I was thinking, there's no way, this is going to wrap up well
Yeah.
with one more. So I was very relieved. I think I think I just looked on your blog or something and you were talking about book four. So uh, yes, I'm happy about this.
Yeah, yeah, no, it's I think I knew really early on um that it was very likely to be four books. The publisher originally called it the Hierarchy trilogy when they put it up sort of online, and I immediately had to go, no, 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 no. Let's let's remove the word trilogy from this. I made this mistake with Lacanius. Let's just yeah, let's just make it an indeterminate number of books at this point. Uh, but no, my plan is for four. I've got a really good outline for four, and at this stage, yeah, book three is shaping up really well. I don't see any major issues with it, other than it's again, it's longer than I expected it to be at this point.
I'm
But it's
yeah.
first draft. It's first draft still. So again, there might be cuts, but we'll see.
I'm all about more of something good, so more pages are never a bad thing.
All right, so final question here. We're halfway through the series. Do we have a solid foundation for the end game, or can we expect more twistiness? Boy, I'm sure you've got more things planned for us, but do you feel like we're at least set up to get to what will ultimately be the end of the series?
Yeah, I mean, I think this was in a weird way, this was the setup book. Um, like
Hmm.
even though it's book two, it's yeah, I think you've got a good foundation of um you know there's not suddenly going to be another three worlds or anything like that. You know, I think everything's pretty well established. It's like I said with book three and four, I feel like it's relatively speaking a downhill run for me now. I'm feeling very comfortable with where everything's at and how everything's been established. So so yeah, I think so.
I mean, we got the classic, like, do we even have a firm grasp on who is not just who's good or bad, but like whose philosophy is the right one to support in this moment?
Yep.
There's the tr I don't remember his. I'm so bad with names, especially if I've like read it because my mind just like sees the letters and just. But the true princeps, who the other princeps were ceding to,
Yep.
in Res, there's him, and he's fighting against the is it the sync? What's the group called?
The concurrent.
Concurrence. Yeah, not
Yep.
yeah. And so it's like already you're like I feel like we've been fed information that either side is good and bad, and which is so classic. Like thinking back to like Canius, where like I imagine in book three we'll have a sense of like, okay, these are the good guys, and then in book four it's going to be even more nuanced, which is so fun to piece through. So, oops.
Well, James, thank you so much for joining. It's been great to get your insights, and man, we're looking forward to more and very excited about the secret project next year.
Yeah. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All right. We'll
Right.
talk to you maybe in the future. Who knows?
Absolutely. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
Thanks for coming
Bye bye.
on.